Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. That's a Mercedes GLS. It's the German equivalent of an Escalade. There's one or two of them around Warrington, and it's quite nice, but it's far too big for me, and I wouldn't have one, because I'm on my own, and there's no point in me having a car that can sit 5 people plus the driver. Anyway, enough about that. As you know, the population decline all over the world is having dramatic effects in areas of the economy, in the decline of lots of children's stuff. Now this is starting to become something of a political football now, because looking around I found this. Now I don't know how relevant Vox is, but this was done on November the 27th last year. As you can see, the title, you can't even pay people to have more children. In Taiwan, they spent $3 billion trying to get citizens to have more children. And it's after decades of a falling birth rate, they began offering 6 months of paternity leave, reimbursing 60% of new parents' salary. Then recently increased that share to 80%. The government has introduced a cash benefit and a tax break for parents of young children, has invested in childcare centres. Well, if the population is dropping, they'll have childcare centres without children to go in them. And perhaps having exhausted more conventional approaches, current and would-be lawmakers have started getting creative. The Taiwanese authorities have hosted several single mixers to get young people to pair up. Now they're doing that in America with singles events, but generally it's 100 women turn up and only 3 guys turn up, and those 3 guys are not Chad or Tyrone, so they get all 100 women going home without having any contact with them, and the guys are being ignored by all 100 women. So it says if history is any guide, none of this will work no matter what governments do to convince them to procreate. People around the world are having fewer and fewer children. And then it goes on about America. The birth rate since the Great Recession dropped by almost 23%. Today the average American woman has 1.6 children, down from 3 in 1950, when the family unit was strong in America, and significant below the replacement level of 2.1 children. And in Italy, 12 people now die for every 7 babies born. In South Korea, the birth rate's down 0 to 0.81 children per woman. In China, after decades of the one-child policy, the population is shrinking for the first time. In Taiwan, the birth rate stands at 1.87, just above the South Korea. And the drop has frightened lawmakers and commentators alike, i.e. the governments are getting worried. With headlines warning of the coming demographic crisis, that link takes you to a Bloomberg article, but it's behind a paywall. Or great people shortage, that takes you to an article by Business Weekly. It's about the shortage of people working in American industry, but a lot of people in American industries are being replaced by robots as AI slowly gathers pace. Even the warehouse sector of the American economy, they're slowly starting to integrate robots doing the manual work. So that is another area where there won't be any people working. In Italy, in Turin, there's a Fiat factory. I think there was about 40 people working in the whole factory, and everything else is robots. You've seen how many robots are on car production lines. Well, that's going to get even more advanced as AI kicks in and robots get more sophisticated. Anyway, getting a bit distracted now. It says, as economies find themselves without enough young workers to fill jobs and pay taxes, that's the main thing, To stem the tide, the world's leaders have tried everything from generous social welfare programs to pink and blue awareness campaigns to five-figure checks to veiled threats. I wonder who the threats are aimed at, guys or women, all to relative little avail. Even the richest, savviest, most committed governments have struggled to find policies that produce sustained bumps in fertility. And says this professor, if such policies were discoverable, I think someone would have discovered them. But they're all not looking at the elephant in the room, in that women are being picky of the guys that they want to have children with. A woman who's a 5 at the most sexual market value, she thinks she's a 10 and thinks that she deserves a 10. But a guy that's a 10, he's got options and he won't be going with a woman who is a 5. He says, failure of dozens of these very expensive pro-natalist policies to produce much of a return as policymakers and observers alike wondering whether there's any way for governments to convince their citizens to have more babies. If not, what should lawmakers be doing instead to help societies adopt to demographically changed world? And then we have how politicians are trying to convince people to have babies. Various examples. In many ways, falling birth rate is a success story, the result of young people, especially women, having more options and freedom than ever before. For example, women are better able to control their fertility than in decades past. That was the contraceptive pill introduced in the 1960s, and women were let off the sexual leash. The Dobbs decision and subsequent state bans on abortion that may change that calculus in America, but prior to the fall of Roe, teen births and unintended births were on the decline, and use of highly effective contraception methods were on the rise. Also, women being picky in who they slept with, plus with the rise of contraception, they racked up a high body count, and a guy doesn't want a woman with a high body count. Recently, however, declining fertility has stoked anxieties around the world as leaders face down the prospect of slowing growth and aging populations. Fewer births do have real consequences for how families and societies operate. In 2010, for example, there were more than 7 family members available to care for each person from the age of 80. By 2030, 6 years from now, there'll be only 4. An aging society means fewer workers in key industries and fewer people paying into programs like Social Security. And then it goes down. The prospects tend to elicit panic among conservatives who take a moralistic and sometimes xenophobic, that's the left talking, turn and addressing the issue. And then in China, male community party officials at recent meetings on women's issues bypass any talk of gender equality in China, instead of urging women to establish correct outlook of marriage, love and childbirth. In other words, the feminism has gone out the window in China. In Hungary, President Viktor Orban has exhorted citizens to reproduce rather than allowing the country's population to grow through immigration, saying migration for us is surrender. And then it goes back to Taiwan, and then it goes on about Europe. The other countries have tried payments to parents. Russia began offering a one-term sum of $7,000 to families of more than 2 children, while Italy and Greece have experimented with per-child baby bonuses, and Hungary introduced a loan of around $30,000 to newlyweds. If they have 3 children, the loan is forgiven. You see, none of them are addressing, again, the elephant in the room, women being too picky. Our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, they married into their people who are on the same level as them, and there's no slanting of women who are a 4 or a 5 wanting a guy who's a 9 as a 10 and who has lots of options as there is today. And then it says public education campaigns have also emerged, especially begging people to reproduce. In Sweden, a 2015 poster asked, "Have you counted your eggs today?" Also in Denmark, there was a thing, "Do it for Denmark," but that was a failure. In 2012, the Singaporean government partnered with Mentors to release a rap video encouraging couples to make Singapore's birth rate spike. Whoops. And then more yada yada. So far countries have tried asking people nicely to reproduce or sweeten the deal. If that doesn't work, however, restricting people's reproductive choices may be on the table, wherever that means, especially in more autocratic regimes. In Iran, the government in the 1990s made birth control cheap or free in an effort to curb population growth. Authorities are now cracking down on abortion and contraceptive as part of a drive to boost births. In America, U.S. abortion bans have not generally been explicitly promoted as population-boosting measures, but some see them that way. New House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican, has linked falling birth rates and a demographic change with abortion, resulting in the Roe versus Wade, and you know how that turned out with amongst the feminists. What is responsible for the death of American workers? We're all struggling here on the basis of Social Security and Medicare, and Medicaid for all the rest, he said at a committee hearing. If we had all those able-bodied workers in the economy, we wouldn't be going upside down and topping over like this. But then you've still got automation sweeping through the industrialized countries. And then more about China. And then why is it so hard to convince people to procreate? And public service campaigns and government-sponsored singles events, which are often awkward aura of high school health teacher lecturing students about sex. And that's about in Taiwan. And then in the US, meanwhile, rhetoric aimed at getting people to have more children can ring hollow, given a racist history in which white motherhood has been lorded over black women's fertility. And then we go that's into racial areas. And then even in countries like Sweden and Norway, known worldwide for their generous paternity leave and other supports, fertility has begun to decline. It doesn't say that in places like Sweden and Norway and Finland, feminism is quite established and the women are ultra picky about who they want to date and go to bed with and have sex with, unless of course you're a Swedish, a Norwegian or Finnish, Chad or Tyrone. These countries do have higher birth rates than some of their neighbours. It's possible that their drops would be starker without policies like childcare and paid leave in place. And then there are policies that can help people create the families they want, more yada yada. The equitable family policy in America also includes investment in healthcare for black birthing people. What a stupid tone. Should be black mothers and fathers, not birthing people. Including maternity, mental health and access to providers who look like us. That's going into race again. And then more yada yada. It's quite a long article, people, so I have to zip through it. And that's it. Now that is Vox. That was done on November 27th last year. Fast forward to January 11th this year. The Catholic Church is starting to get worried. Swathes of women are involuntary single and childless, COVID lockdowns and the ticking biological clock. This was done, as I said, January 11th. It's just a party piece. Where is it? We agree we mustn't worry that age 35 we still had some time to find the right man, get married and have babies. My mother met my father at 36 and had me at 37. My mum, on a personal note, was 38 when she had me. Mum wanted one more baby because I got 2 older brothers, but Mum was 38, so I was just a last-minute baby, so to speak. This friend's mother had started similarly late, having her first baby at 38 and a second at 40. And then, where is it? There's somewhere else about guys. Bloody hell. I know. Lost. There we go. Sorry about this, people. She says, when I was single, the men I did met my age around who weren't homosexual seemed somehow lost and were clearly in no way looking for any kind of responsibility. In other words, they could have been red pill MGTOWs, not interested in getting married, getting a woman pregnant, or cohabiting with a woman. Something I imagine had not been helped by the prevalence of dating apps, which offer endless choice and a phone to hide behind. The whole business was endlessly disappointing and dispiriting. That was pre-COVID, but when society still operated in a vaguely normal way. Now this is a bunch of women. They're 35. They're post-wall. And it says, I can't believe you're about to have your third baby today, blah, 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 said an old girlfriend wishfully over supper the other night. It was the first time I'd noticed, though no one really talks about in that women, when they enter their mid to late 30s, suddenly become very starkly divided between those who have children and those who don't, with the ones who don't suddenly facing the very real prospect of remaining that way forever. And then we all know that women's fertility rate stops to drop at 35, and by that time there were 40 or more chances of conception, especially if they've never had any children before. So the Catholic Church is starting to get really worried about the falling birth rate, because the less people go to church, the less people there will be in the congregation, and some churches might have to close down. Now, going back to America, in the Pew Research, Statistica, my bad, I found this. This is the number of percentage of childless women in America in 2020. As you can see, 15 to 19, 2024, and so on. Now, in 10 years, this crowd will be there. This crowd will be irrelevant because they'll be dead or way past the ability to have children. So, as you know, by 2030, 52% of American women will be single and childless. That could probably rise to about 50 to 60%, maybe 60%. So, this graph, this will drop down. This crowd will be here, but it could be 60% right across the board, which has a dramatic effect on the American economy. Now, it's even worse over in South Korea. I found this. This is unheard. This was done on March 24th last year. And it's just about the South Korean, the falling birth rate. I think the most fundamental issue at hand is a lot of girls realize they don't really have to do this anymore. One South Korean woman tells the author they can just opt out. Fair enough, but the population will collapse. The fertility issue is hardly unique in South Korea. Look at the comments in any place in the UK media about their own falling birth rate. At least half say something along the lines of a good thing too. All environmental problems have become easy to solve with fewer people. David Attenborough, the BBC. Take no notice what the BBC says. It's just a leftist, public-funded institute that doesn't say anything other than the left wants you to hear about. And along with other environmentalists and feminists who don't have to look too far to find people cheering on the dwindling of our species. And then it drops down. Examples of South Korea should be warning to those who welcome a decline the size of the global human population, because the truth of the matter is that birth rates are not falling evenly across the whole world, nor are they falling gently. What we are seeing instead is precipitous falls in some rich countries, along with some subpopulations in particular, leading to some extreme political phenomena. And then, whoops, take the UK, which is likely to face enormous demographic changes as a result of uneven fertility rates. Well, I'm 67 now. In about 20 years, I'll either be very old or very dead, so it won't really matter to me. For instance, it is becoming increasingly clear that one of the strongest predictors of fertility is religiously. More religious people have more children, i.e. Muslims, and a tendency toward religiosity is moderately habitable, having suffered the humiliation of the atheist revolution. That be the left. It seems the believers are set to have the last laugh, which is bad news for secular feminists, among others, given the very direct conflict between their values and those of ancient religious traditions that are set to surge. In other words, there's more Muslims producing babies than white Christians producing babies. Now that's unheard. Staying with the BBC, I found this. This was done on May the 20th of May this year. How should countries deal with falling birth rates? And it goes more yada yada about it. I'll naturally put all these links below. Here in Britain, it's 1.49 children per woman. And it's same in Scotland and Northern Ireland, i.e. Ulster. And it says in America the fertility rate is 1.62, a record low. Back in 1960 it was 3.65. But back in 1960 the contraceptive pill was introduced and women were let off the sexual leash. And 1960 was second wave feminism started in America. And then 2/3 of the world countries now are child-based below the replacement level. Japan is low, China is low, South Korea is the lowest in the world. That's in that article, that one. And then it goes down. Where will the nation's economic growth come from if companies cannot recruit enough workers? Well, companies are adopting robots. How can a smaller workforce afford to pay for the pensions of a much larger retired population? Governments are simply tax companies per robot. There are questions to make government economists wince. And then it goes down, yada yada yada. So we're having fewer children or none at all. There are basically two ways in which a country can deal with a falling birth rate. They can keep their population healthier and employed for longer. In other words, you work till you drop. Or they can have large-scale immigration. But the people pouring across the American border, what skills have they got? The people coming into Europe from sub-Saharan Africa and the Muslim parts of the world, what skills have they got? Nothing that could benefit a industrialized white Western economy. And then I've gone about Singapore is one of the fastest growing countries in the world, and it's going for the first option to keep the population healthier. There's a lot of effort being put into raising the retirement age, training in middle life, and encouraging companies which have to offer re-employment up to the age of 69 to hire older workers. I've been working on and off since I left school, since I was 15. I don't want to go back to work. I've paid my subs, the stamps for my state pension. Why should I have to work till I drop? When do I get to have a bit of fun in my life? Not on. I ain't going back to work. They can forget that. By re-employment, Professor Chan means older workers being able to stay in work after they have reached retirement age if they so wish. Well, I don't wish. As soon as I reach 66, which is the state retirement here in Britain, I applied for a pension and that was it. And then the retirement age in Singapore is 63. It's used to rise to 64. Here in Britain, it's used to rise exponent bit by bit till about 68. By that year age, which people in re-employment can stay to work and expect to have rise to 70. Yeah, but with 70, 60 years and 10, as the Bible says. And then more BBC yabba yada. Got by the end of the century, the North America, that's that. By 2020, it's flattened out, and it's going to remain flat to 2100. I'm 67 now, so by 2060, I'll either be very old or very dead, so it won't matter to me. And then more yada yada. That's the BBC. This is So UK. That is a British government talking shop, like a NGO, something like that. And you can read population collapse, why we should all be worried about falling birth rates. This was done on 6th of June this year. Our planet's population is currently growing, yada yada yada. An increasingly male population, mature population. With MGTOW, it'll be an increasingly male population if the women start dying off. And then the response, the many high-profile figures have spoken about the dwindling birth rate. Elon Musk stated population collapse due to low birth rates is a much bigger risk to civilization than global warming. Well, global warming is not really a threat because the planet's always had a changing climate ever since we had a climate. And then this bit was interesting. The educated woman. The steady decline in birth rates across the world has had numerous reasons, with women's liberation riding at the forefront. In many traditionally focused countries, education has broken the standards when it comes to women. In other words, women going into college, offering them more than marriage and motherhood. Iran is one example of the break free from social norms. In the 1950s, Iranian women had an average of 3 years education and raised 7 children. Flash forward 60 years, now with 9 years of schooling, the average fertility rate has dropped from 1 to 1.8 by 2010, which contradicts the other paragraph about Iran, and the Iranians are cracking down on contraception and wanting women to produce more children again because the population has dropped. And it says Iran is just one effect of the effects of education on fertility rates. Instead of being as mere baby machines, more women have been given a foundation to raise their voices. In the empowering words of Angelina Jolie, she couldn't even keep Brad Pitt. There's no greater pillar of stability than a strong and educated woman. But a strong and educated woman doesn't want an average man. A strong and educated woman wants a top man, a 9 and a 10 in the 1 and 10% of society. But that guy's got options, and he doesn't want a strong and educated woman who could possibly come across as a domineering boss babe, a pseudo man. But anyway, it says, changing perspectives. While better education is undoubtedly a factor in decreasing birth rates, inflation is perhaps an even bigger one. 1 in 4 American millennials said they are still living with their parents in 2022, owing to the increased cost of a living. Well, if you're American, you'll know how prices have gone up. Even I've noticed prices in the shops have gone up. My rent's gone up, but it's doable. But the Asda, where I do my weekly shop, used to be a cheap shop, but it's not anymore. Anyway, it says, the estate agent Hamptons estimate that people paid a record £85 billion in rent last year, and higher interest rates mean many millennials are unable to move on into the housing ladder, which means that the housing ladder will collapse. That's the second bubble that's going to be bursting in Western world. There's already signs of that happening in America, with BlackRock buying masses of houses, and they're not finding anybody to move into them. Anyway, more yada yada, the middle way, changing world of opportunities, a balance need to be found. Come on, Christopher. Women should have the chance to become mothers as well as career women. You can't have both. And society needs to encourage both. It can't. Who's going to look after the children? Palm the children off to a daycare? Have another woman raise your children? These two paths do have to be mutually exclusive, at odds with each other. They are twisted and intertwined, but are incredibly rewarding. Women should have the opportunity to improve the world around them, while also raising new life to carry on their good work. But if they're working, they can't raise the children. And it says, this is a call for governments to step forward and support families, support women. How about supporting men in the workplace? Insufficient maternity support has caused many women in the past to have to choose between raising a family and building their career. This needs to change. You make of that as you wish. Now that is a government talking shop. Now over in America, we've got the election coming up. Looking around, I found this. Electoral 2024. This was done August 4th, which was... Where's August 4th? A week last Sunday. Done by a lady called Gemma Allen. And she puts, whoops. I write about feminine empowerment and the power of community, which gives you an idea what this article will be all about. And the election race has started. The resurfaced interviews, Fox News, Tucker Carlson, then Senate candidate J.D. Vance launched a tirade against Democrats and their choices are not a family life, suggesting that single people, they do not have a direct stake in the country, describing them as a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable in their own lives and the choices that they have made, so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's just stating facts. But of course the feminist agenda and the feminists in America went ballistic over this. It says his remarks earned a rare rebuke from America's actress Jennifer Aniston. She wanted to be more of a movie star than a mother, whose childless life being the media obsession, blah, blah, blah. As 55 call out on Vance's highly insensitive stance towards the many women who, like herself, don't have the opportunity to choose their outcomes, humanizing the pain of infertility. She was in a fertile period in her 20s, but Jennifer wanted to be a movie star, not be a mother. Plus, remember, she had Brad Pitt, but he wasn't enough for her. Humanizing the pain of infertility and lack of glaring of empathy, compassion and rational judgment from a man who sees himself as a born leader. And then Anderson is not alone. The words have come under fire from women across America. Consider not just insensitive but poor politics, most notably in sharp contrast with Donald Trump's recent campaign tagline in the Republican National Convention, declaring himself a president for all Americans. J.D. Vance, it would seem, just not the childless ones, aka estimate 38% of the American population, approximately 46 million women in America, are childless. That will grow exponentially as we get closer to 2030. Now this bit was interesting. Childless Americans are a fast-growing electorate with the national fertility rates reaching historic low. Blah, blah, blah. National health statistics data shows that how 20% of American women are childless by the age of 44, and the share of US adults under 50 who say they are unlikely to ever have kids rose from 38% in 2018 to 47% in 2023. And then drop down. Harris is not believed to be a Catwoman. She's got 2 stepchildren. And instead, this Harris's views on Modern Family. It's not Harris, you dozy sod. What? Blah, blah, blah. Sorry about this, people. Vance. Vance's views on the Modern Family as a manifestation of godless America, whose secular threatens traditional, and the choice of significant segment of the electorate, particularly alphabets and women, are portrayed as anti-family and anti-child. A pointed reminder that this election is not being fought on facts, but instead a cultural war on gender and free choice. In other words, gender's on the agenda for the American the electoral. And drop down, economics of sinks, single income, no kids, still looking for the right spouse and partner. Now 44% of women are looking for Chad and Tyrone. 36 can't afford it. Lifetime of career 25%. Family still growing, but are they married? And trouble conceiving. It's very sad for them. But 44% still looking for the right spouse partner. Those are probably women who are on average 4 to maybe 7, looking for guys who are 7 to 9s to 10s, guys with options. And that's no doubt going to get bigger as we carry on. And then it says, there are women who seem to confuse, infuriate men like Vance the most. They're not following tradition but living their lives according to their own ideals. They come from various backgrounds and experiences, and unlike the stereotype of the unfulfilled childless cat ladies, research has shown these women are often happier than their average mom. Then why are they complaining on TikTok? And then another big article, lots of yada yada, and that's her. She's a mom, Irish American storyteller, woman in tech, advocates who believes in every fibre of her being in female advancement and the power of community to help shape our own futures. She lives in Brooklyn, and she's got 2 children. Both of them are girls. No doubt they're going to be 2 feminists when they grow up, and there's a chance that she might never be a grandmother. And to finish it off, as this is a MGTOW channel, I found this. This was in my inbox. As you can see, it's Red Pill MGTOW. I think this is an American site, because if you drop down, if everyone's body count's on their forehead, 79, 0, that's a lie. Hard times create hot chicks. Hot chicks create good times. Good times create fat chicks. Fat chicks create hard times. And we go back. There's Miss Alabama. Well, you couldn't bloody miss her. This woman found dead in mountains, victim of California's first fatal bear attack. I wonder if she was on her own. Now this is what wanted to show you. This was all pre-planned. There's Janet Jackson and the Michael's sister. It says, in 2010, the famous singer Janet Jackson, sister of the late king of pop Michael Jackson, met Qatari billionaire Wissam Anmana. That's him. In 2012, they got engaged. Before getting married, Janet signed a prenup, stipulating that in the event of divorce, she would not receive any share of her husband's fortune until 5 years of marriage. If the divorce occurs after 5 years, she will receive $100 million. If she has children, she will receive an additional $100 million. In 2016, Janet became pregnant and gave birth to her child in January 2017. In April the same year, after exactly 5 years of marriage, she was counting down, she decided to separate from Wissam Anmana and thus obtain $200 million. Simp. He hadn't probably got any idea what Western women are like. He thought he'd found the love of his life, but he's now $200 million short. Will he learn from it and become a Muslim red pill? You tell me. But anyway, as you can see, governments can't even pay people to have more children. The Catholic Church is getting worried about the falling birth rate. This will, as I showed you, this will probably level off at 60% right across the board in about 10 years, 15 years. The Korea is on a terminal decline. The North Korean will probably be bigger population. The BBC, per usual, should countries deal with the falling birth rates, and the BBC's thing is import more people. And the government talking shops over here are worried about it. That means the government. But in America, the birth rate has become an economic reality, with the Vance's childless cat lazy quote is just stating the obvious. But in the elephant in the room that nobody tends to address in all these articles is that women are too picky, and they're trying to get guys who have got options, and they haven't got much to offer the guys that have options, because a lot of these women are 4s and 5s, or maybe 7s, but guys with options, they don't want to get a woman 4 and 5 an option, because they go for women who are more attractive and younger and fertile than these 4 and 5s to 7s are. But anyway, I think I'm way over the 30-minute now, probably getting on for an hour, so I'll have to leave this at that. You know the routine, people. Like, dislike, comment, subscribe, etc. It's completely up to you. I'll naturally put all these links, I can't say below because we've got the new YouTube UI again, so it'll be to the right of the screen. So until next Monday, that's it for this one. Bye bye.